The rain came down in sheets that October evening, turning the city streets into rivers of reflected neon light. Sarah Martinez pulled her worn jacket tighter around her swollen belly as she made her way through the downtown district. At 7 months pregnant and completely alone in the world, every step felt heavier than the last. The clinic appointment had confirmed what she already knew. Her baby was healthy, but the bills were piling up faster than she could count them. She had $20 left in her wallet and 3 days until her next paycheck from the diner. The small apartment she rented was behind on payments, and her landlord had started leaving threatening notes under her door. Her phone had been disconnected 2 weeks ago. The father of her child had vanished the moment she told him about the pregnancy, blocking her number and moving to another state without a word. Her parents had disowned her years ago when she dropped out of college to pursue art, and pride kept her from crawling back to them now. The bus stop bench offered little shelter from the storm, but Sarah sank onto it gratefully. Her feet were swollen and aching from the double shift she had worked before the appointment. She watched the rain bounce off the pavement and felt tears mixing with the rainwater on her cheeks. How had everything gone so wrong? 6 months ago, she had been happy, in love, planning a future. Now she sat alone in the rain with nothing but fear and uncertainty ahead of her. That was when she noticed him. Through the curtain of rain, a figure sat on another bench about 30 feet away. Even from that distance, Sarah could tell he was different from the usual crowd that frequented this area. He wore an expensive dark suit that somehow looked pristine despite the downpour. His posture was straight, almost regal, and he held a bouquet of deep red roses in his lap. The flowers looked fresh, untouched by the rain, as if he had been protecting them. Something about the scene struck Sarah as deeply sad. Here was a man who clearly had money, dressed in clothes that probably cost more than her monthly rent, sitting alone in a storm with flowers that were meant for someone. She wondered who had stood him up, who had broken a promise important enough to warrant such beautiful roses. The thought made her own loneliness feel less isolating somehow. Even people who seemed to have everything could end up alone on a rainy bench. The man turned his head slightly, and Sarah caught a glimpse of his profile. He was handsome in a dangerous way, with sharp features and dark hair slicked back from his face. His jaw was set in a hard line, and even from this distance she could see the tension in his shoulders. He looked like a man carrying the weight of impossible decisions. His hands, elegant and strong, adjusted the roses carefully, making sure none of the petals were damaged. Sarah pulled her gaze away, not wanting to be caught staring. She rummaged through her small purse for the granola bar she had saved from breakfast, her stomach growling despite the nausea that had plagued her for months. The wrapper crinkled loudly in the quiet evening, broken only by the sound of rain and distant traffic. She took small bites, trying to make it last, knowing it might be all she had until tomorrow. When she looked up again, the man was watching her. His eyes were dark and intense, studying her with an expression she could not quite read. It was not threatening exactly, but it made her nervous. Sarah looked away quickly, focusing on the granola bar in her trembling hands. She heard footsteps on the wet pavement and realized with a spike of anxiety that he was walking toward her. Every instinct told her to run, but her exhausted body would not cooperate. She clutched her purse tighter and kept her eyes down as expensive leather shoes appeared in her line of vision. They stopped directly in front of her bench. Sarah forced herself to look up, meeting the gaze of the stranger who now stood before her, rain dripping from his dark hair, the red roses still perfect in his grip. Up close, he was even more striking. His face was all sharp angles and intensity, with eyes that seemed to see right through her careful walls. There was something dangerous about him, something that whispered of power and violence barely contained. But there was also something else, a flicker of something almost vulnerable in his expression as he looked at her pregnant form huddled on the bench. "You should not be out here in this weather," he said. His voice was deep and rich, with the faintest trace of an accent she could not place. "Italian maybe, or Spanish, not in your condition." Sarah bristled at the presumption, even though he was absolutely right. "I am fine," she lied, wrapping her arms around her belly protectively. "I am just waiting for the bus." He glanced at the bus stop sign, then back at her with raised eyebrows. "The last bus on this route left 20 minutes ago. The next one will not come until tomorrow morning." He paused, his dark eyes scanning her face with unsettling intensity. "You knew that, did you not? You have nowhere to go tonight." The accuracy of his observation made Sarah's throat tighten. She wanted to deny it to maintain some shred of dignity, but what was the point? "That is none of your business," she managed to say, though her voice cracked on the last word. The man studied her for a long moment, rain continuing to fall around them. Then, to her complete surprise, he extended the bouquet of roses toward her. "These were meant for someone who is not coming," he said quietly. "They should not go to waste. Please take them." Sarah stared at the flowers, confused and wary. "I cannot take your roses. They are for someone special." "They were," he corrected, something dark and painful flashing across his features. "She is gone now. Dead for 3 years today. I come here every year on this date, to the place where we first met, and I wait like a fool for a ghost." He pushed the roses closer to her. "But perhaps they can serve a better purpose tonight, please." The raw honesty in his words struck something deep in Sarah's chest. She reached out slowly and took the bouquet, the velvety petals soft against her cold fingers. "I am sorry for your loss," she whispered, meaning it with her whole heart. He nodded once, acknowledging her sympathy. Then he did something completely unexpected. He shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders before she could protest. The fabric was warm and smelled of expensive cologne and something else, something masculine and comforting. "My car is parked around the corner," he said in a tone that brooked no argument. "I will drive you wherever you need to go." "I do not even know you," Sarah protested weakly, though the warmth of his jacket was already seeping into her chilled bones. "You could be anyone." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, but it did not reach his eyes. "My name is Marco Valentino," he said, and something about the way he said it suggested she should recognize the name. When her expression remained blank, his smile grew slightly more genuine. "And you are right to be cautious. But I give you my word that I mean you no harm. I simply cannot leave a pregnant woman alone in the rain with nowhere to go. My mother would rise from her grave to strike me down." Sarah wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain her independence and pride, but she was so tired, so cold, and so utterly without options. The baby kicked inside her as if adding its own opinion to the decision. She looked into Marco Valentino's dark eyes and saw something there that made her want to trust him, despite every logical reason not to. "Sarah," she heard herself say. "My name is Sarah Martinez." "Well, Sarah Martinez," Marco said, offering her his hand to help her up from the bench. "Let us get you out of this rain." Marco's car was exactly what Sarah expected from a man who wore $1,000 suits in the rain. The black Mercedes gleamed under the streetlights, sleek and powerful like its owner. He opened the passenger door for her with old-world courtesy, waiting until she was settled before closing it gently and walking around to the driver's side. The interior smelled of leather and that same cologne, and the seats were heated, sending immediate warmth through her cold, aching body. As Marco pulled smoothly into traffic, Sarah clutched the roses in her lap and tried to figure out what she had just agreed to. She studied his profile as he drove, noting the way his jaw tensed and relaxed, the careful control in every movement. His hands on the steering wheel were steady and sure, and she noticed for the first time the expensive watch on his wrist and a ring on his right hand with some kind of crest or symbol she did not recognize. "Where are we going?" she asked finally, her voice small in the quiet car. Marco glanced at her, then back at the road. "Where were you planning to spend the night, Sarah?" She bit her lip, debating whether to lie, but something about his direct gaze made dishonesty feel impossible. "I was going to go back to my apartment, but my landlord changed the locks this morning. My things are probably in boxes on the curb by now." The admission hurt, made her failure feel more real. His hands tightened almost imperceptibly on the wheel. "Family? Friends?" Sarah shook her head, blinking back fresh tears. "No family that will talk to me. My friends all drifted away when I got pregnant. They said I was making a mistake, that I was ruining my life." She laughed bitterly. "Turns out they were right." "They were wrong," Marco said firmly, his voice hard. "Children are never a mistake. People who abandon those in need, those are the mistakes." He was quiet for a moment, seeming to wrestle with something internal. Then he made a decision. "I have a property not far from here, a townhouse I keep for business associates who visit the city. It is empty right now. You will stay there tonight, and we will figure out the rest tomorrow." Sarah's defenses went up immediately. "I cannot accept that. I do not know you, and I definitely cannot stay in your property. What would you want in return? Marco's expression darkened, and for the first time Sarah saw a flash of the dangerous man beneath the careful courtesy. I want nothing in return, except the knowledge that you and your child are safe and warm tonight. Do I look like a man who needs to coerce homeless pregnant women for companionship? The question was harsh but fair. No, Sarah admitted quietly. You look like a man who could have anything he wants. Almost anything, Marco corrected, and the pain in those two words spoke of depths Sarah could only guess at. The things I want most in this world are beyond my reach now. They drove in silence through streets that grew progressively quieter and more upscale. Sarah watched the neighborhoods change from run-down to middle-class to wealthy, feeling more out of place with every passing block. When Marco finally pulled up in front of an elegant brownstone townhouse in a tree-lined street, she felt her stomach drop. This was not just a property. This was worth more than she would make in 10 lifetimes. I cannot stay here, she said immediately. This is too much. This is insane. You are insane for even offering. Marco turned off the engine and faced her fully. Sarah, I am going to tell you something and I need you to listen carefully. My name, Marco Valentino, it means something in this city. My family has power and influence that spans generations. I am not a good man by most definitions. I have done things that would horrify you. But I am not a liar, and I keep my word. When I tell you that you will be safe here, that I expect nothing from you, I mean it with everything I am. The intensity in his voice sent shivers down Sarah's spine. What exactly does your family do? She asked, though part of her already suspected the answer. Marco smiled grimly. We handle problems that conventional businesses cannot solve. We facilitate transactions that exist in the gray areas of the law. My father built an empire on loyalty and blood, and when he died, that empire became mine. He watched her face carefully. Does that frighten you? Sarah should have been terrified. Every rational instinct screamed that she should run, should get out of this car and away from this dangerous man. But when she looked into his eyes, what she saw was not a monster. She saw a man carrying unbearable weight, a man who had loved and lost, a man who was offering her kindness when she desperately needed it. It should frighten me, she said honestly, but right now I am too tired and too desperate to be frightened. My baby needs somewhere warm to sleep tonight, and you are offering that. So either you are a terrible person playing a long game, or you are a complicated person doing a kind thing. I am choosing to believe the latter. Marco's expression softened almost imperceptibly. You are either very brave or very foolish. Probably both, Sarah said with a weak smile. He got out of the car and came around to help her, supporting her elbow as she stood on shaky legs. The townhouse was even more beautiful inside, all hardwood floors and elegant furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Marco led her to a bedroom on the second floor, spacious and comfortable with an attached bathroom. There should be some clothes in the closet that might fit you, he said, gesturing toward a large wardrobe. They belonged to my sister when she stayed here. She is taller than you, but you should find something comfortable. He moved toward the door, then paused. The kitchen is fully stocked. Eat whatever you want. There is a security system, and my men patrol this street regularly, so you are completely safe. I will be back tomorrow morning to check on you. Wait, Sarah said, surprising herself. You are leaving? Marco turned back, one eyebrow raised. I thought you would prefer privacy. I have my own home across the city. Sarah felt foolish for the spike of disappointment. Of course, I just thank you for all of this. I do not understand why you are helping me, but thank you. He studied her for a long moment, something unreadable crossing his features. 3 years ago today, I lost the only woman I ever loved. Elena was pregnant when she died 7 months along, just like you. Our daughter died with her. His voice was carefully controlled, but Sarah could hear the ocean of grief beneath it. I could not save them, but perhaps I can help you. Perhaps that means something. Sarah's heart broke for him. Without thinking, she crossed the room and took his hand, squeezing it gently. I am so sorry, Marco. No one should have to carry that kind of pain. He looked down at their joined hands, seeming surprised by the contact. When he looked back up at her, his dark eyes were suspiciously bright. "Get some rest, Sarah. Tomorrow we will figure out how to help you get back on your feet." He squeezed her hand once, then gently pulled away and left, closing the door quietly behind him. Sarah stood alone in the beautiful bedroom, clutching the roses he had given her, and wondered what kind of man Marco Valentino really was. A monster who ruled a criminal empire, or a heartbroken father who could not save his own family. Perhaps he was both. Perhaps people were more complicated than simple labels allowed. She spent the next hour exploring the townhouse cautiously, half expecting someone to jump out and tell her this was all a cruel joke. The kitchen was indeed fully stocked with food that looked fresh and expensive. She made herself a simple sandwich, the first real meal she had eaten in days, and nearly cried at how good it tasted. The bathroom had luxury toiletries and thick towels, and the hot shower felt like heaven on her aching muscles. In the closet, she found clothes as promised. Marco's sister must have been pregnant at some point because there were several maternity outfits that fit reasonably well. Sarah changed into soft pajamas and climbed into the enormous bed, sinking into pillows that felt like clouds. The sheets smelled fresh and clean, and for the first time in months she felt safe. As she lay in the darkness, one hand on her belly where the baby was kicking gently, Sarah thought about the strange turn her life had taken. This morning she had been at rock bottom, homeless and hopeless. Tonight she was in a luxury townhouse, wrapped in expensive sheets, protected by a Mafia don who mourned his lost family. It was surreal and complicated and possibly dangerous, but it was also a chance. A hand reaching out of the darkness when she needed it most. Whatever Marco Valentino's true nature, whatever his real motivations, he had given her a gift tonight. He had given her hope. And Sarah was going to hold on to that hope with everything she had, for herself and for her baby. She fell asleep with the red roses on the nightstand beside her, their sweet scent filling the room, and dreamed of second chances and complicated men with kind eyes. Morning sunlight streaming through expensive curtains woke Sarah from the deepest sleep she had experienced in months. For a blissful moment she forgot where she was, stretching in the comfortable bed before reality came flooding back. The townhouse. Marco Valentino, the impossible kindness of a dangerous stranger. She sat up carefully, her hand moving automatically to her belly where the baby was already active, doing morning gymnastics against her ribs. The smell of coffee and something delicious drifted up from downstairs. Sarah's stomach growled in response, reminding her that one sandwich last night had not been nearly enough. She found a robe in the closet, wrapped it around herself and made her way cautiously down the stairs. In the bright light of day, the townhouse was even more beautiful than she had realized, with artwork on the walls and fresh flowers in vases that must have been placed there recently. Marco stood in the kitchen, dressed more casually than yesterday, but still impeccably put together in dark slacks and a gray sweater that probably cost more than her old car. He was cooking, incredibly enough, flipping what looked like pancakes on the stove with the same confident precision he had shown while driving. He looked up as she entered, and something in his expression softened when he saw her. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm. "I hope you slept well. I took the liberty of making breakfast. I was not sure what you liked, so I made a bit of everything." Sarah looked at the spread on the counter and felt her eyes sting with unexpected tears. Pancakes, scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, toast, juice, and yogurt. It looked like something from a hotel brunch, abundant and thoughtful. "You did not have to do all this," she managed to say. Marco shrugged, plating food and gesturing for her to sit at the small dining table by the window. "I enjoy cooking. It clears my head. And you need proper nutrition for the baby." He brought over a plate piled high with food and set it in front of her, then poured her a glass of orange juice. "Eat. We have much to discuss." Sarah did not need to be told twice. She dug into the food with an enthusiasm that should have been embarrassing. But Marco only looked pleased. The pancakes were perfect, fluffy, and sweet, and the eggs were seasoned just right. She ate until she was genuinely full for the first time in weeks, while Marco sat across from her with his own modest plate and coffee. "So," he said when she finally slowed down, "tell me about your situation. Everything. I cannot help if I do not understand the full picture." Sarah wiped her mouth with a napkin and took a deep breath. I am 26. I was going to art school but dropped out to paint full-time, which my parents considered unforgivable. We have not spoken in 3 years. I was working at a gallery when I met Tom, the baby's father. He was charming and successful, or so I thought. We moved in together after 6 months. She paused, the memories bitter. When I got pregnant, he changed overnight. Suddenly I was trapping him, ruining his life. He emptied our joint bank account and disappeared. That was 5 months ago. I have been working double shifts at a diner, but the pay barely covers rent and food. Then I got sick with the pregnancy complications and missed too much work. I got behind on rent and now I am here. Marco listened intently, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against his coffee cup. This Tom, he said finally, his voice dangerously soft. What is his full name? Sarah shook her head quickly. No, whatever you are thinking, do not. He is not worth it, and I do not want that kind of help. He abandoned his pregnant girlfriend and stole her money, Marco said, his eyes hard. In my world, that has consequences. In my world, it just makes him a coward, Sarah replied firmly. I do not want revenge. I just want to be able to take care of my baby. Marco studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. As you wish. But know that the offer stands if you change your mind. He leaned back in his chair. Now let us talk about practical solutions. You need stable housing, income, and medical care. The housing is solved. You will stay here as long as you need. Marco, I cannot, Sarah protested. This is too much. I cannot live in your luxury townhouse indefinitely. Why not? He asked simply. It sits empty most of the time. My sister is married and lives in Boston now. My business associates prefer hotels. It serves no purpose and you need it. The matter is settled. Sarah felt overwhelmed by his casual generosity. What about rent? Utilities? I cannot just live here for free. You can and you will, Marco said firmly. Consider it payment for a service you are providing me. What service? Sarah asked, confused. Marco's expression became distant, almost vulnerable. Company. Purpose. This house holds many memories of Elena. She loved it here, spent hours decorating and planning for when our daughter would visit. After she died, I could not sell it, but I could not bear to be here either. It has sat empty, a monument to what I lost. But seeing you here, seeing life in these rooms again, it helps. It makes the ghosts easier to bear. Sarah's throat tightened at the raw honesty in his words. I am not her, Marco. I cannot replace what you lost. I know that, he said gently. I am not looking for a replacement. But perhaps we can help each other. You need safety and stability. I need to feel like I am doing something good, something that matters. Elena would have wanted me to help you. She had a heart that could not stand to see others suffer. Sarah looked into his dark eyes and saw genuine need there. Not just generosity, but something deeper. He needed this as much as she did, maybe more. Okay, she said quietly. But this is temporary, just until I get back on my feet. And I want to contribute somehow. I can clean, cook, whatever you need. Marco smiled slightly. You are 7 months pregnant. You will rest and take care of yourself and that baby. That is your only job. He pulled out his phone and began making notes. You need proper prenatal care. I will arrange for you to see the best obstetrician in the city. Do not worry about the cost. And you need to eat regularly, healthy meals. I will have a meal service deliver fresh food daily. Marco, that is too much, Sarah started, but he held up a hand. It is necessary. A healthy mother means a healthy baby. He continued typing on his phone. You also need clothes and supplies. My assistant will arrange for a personal shopper to bring selections here, so you do not have to go out. And we should discuss what you want to do after the baby comes. Job training, education, whatever interests you. Sarah felt dizzy from the speed at which her life was changing. Yesterday she had been homeless and hopeless. Today a Mafia Don was planning her future like it was the most natural thing in the world. Why are you doing all this? She asked, needing to understand. It is more than just helping someone in need. This is building a whole new life for me. Marco set down his phone and looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. When Elena died, I had all the money and power in the world, and it meant nothing. I could not save her. I could not save our daughter. I have spent 3 years feeling utterly powerless despite being one of the most powerful men in this city. He paused, his jaw working. But I can save you. I can save your baby. I can take this power that has felt like a curse and use it for something good. Do you understand? You are giving me a chance to matter again, to be more than just a man who destroys and controls. Sarah felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She reached across the table and took his hand, squeezing it tightly. You matter, Marco. Even without helping me, you matter. But thank you. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible, for caring when no one else did. He squeezed back, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a gesture that felt almost tender. Thank you for letting me help, for trusting me when you had every reason not to. They sat like that for a long moment, two broken people finding unexpected comfort in each other's presence. Sarah knew this situation was complicated and potentially dangerous. She knew that accepting help from a Mafia Don came with risks she could not fully understand. But she also knew that sometimes life threw you a lifeline when you were drowning, and you had to have the courage to grab it, even if you did not know where it would lead. Marco pulled his hand back gently and stood up. I have business to attend to today, but I will be back this evening. My number is programmed into the house phone. Call if you need anything at all. There is a panic button by the front door that connects directly to my security team. You are completely safe here. Sarah nodded, still processing everything. What should I do today? Rest, explore the house. There is a library on the 3rd floor with Elena's book collection. She loved to read. His voice caught slightly on his late wife's name. Watch movies, paint if you want. There are art supplies in the study. Just be comfortable and take care of yourself. After Marco left, Sarah wandered through the townhouse in a daze. Every room was beautiful and carefully designed, and she could see traces of the woman who had lived here. Photographs showed a beautiful woman with dark hair and a radiant smile, always next to Marco, who looked younger and happier in the pictures. Sarah felt a pang of sadness for the life that had been stolen from them. In the study, she found the art supplies Marco had mentioned, professional-grade materials that made her fingers itch to create. She had not painted in months, too stressed and exhausted to feel any creative spark. But today, in this beautiful house with a full stomach and a sense of safety she had not felt in forever, she felt that old, familiar pull. She set up a small canvas and began to paint, losing herself in color and movement, her baby kicking contentedly inside her as if approving of this new beginning. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm Sarah had never experienced before. Her days developed a comfortable pattern that felt both surreal and increasingly natural. Marco visited every morning, often bringing breakfast or cooking elaborate meals that he insisted were therapeutic for him. They would talk for hours, sharing stories about their pasts, their dreams, their fears. He told her about growing up in a world where loyalty was currency and betrayal meant death, where he had been groomed since childhood to take over an empire built on blood and respect. Sarah learned that Marco was far more than the dangerous man she had first assumed. He was intelligent and well-read, passionate about art and music, fluent in 4 languages. He had wanted to be an architect before his father's death, forced him into the family business at 23. He spoke of his mother with reverence and his sister with protective affection. He was complicated and contradictory, capable of ordering devastating violence one moment and discussing poetry the next. The obstetrician Marco arranged was indeed the best in the city, a kind woman named Dr. Chen, who examined Sarah thoroughly and declared both mother and baby healthy despite the stress Sarah had endured. The appointments were at a private clinic where Sarah never saw a bill, never waited, and received care that felt more like a spa treatment than medical attention. Dr. Chen scheduled regular checkups and ultrasounds, and Sarah watched her baby on the screen with Marco beside her, his hand finding hers when they heard the strong, steady heartbeat. The personal shopper brought beautiful maternity clothes that actually fit properly, along with everything Sarah could possibly need for the baby. The nursery that had once been Elena's daughter's room was gradually restocked with supplies, and Sarah found herself nesting, arranging tiny clothes and setting up the crib with careful precision. Marco watched her do it with an expression that mixed pain and something else, something tender that made Sarah's heart beat faster. Sarah painted every day, filling canvases with color and emotion that had been bottled up for so long. Marco admired her work with genuine appreciation, even insisting on hanging several pieces throughout the townhouse. He told her about galleries he knew, connections he could make to help launch her career properly once the baby came. Sarah protested that she did not want his help beyond what he had already given, But he argued that introducing talent to the right people was not charity. It was common sense, but it was the evenings that Sarah treasured most. Marco began staying for dinner, bringing ingredients and cooking elaborate Italian meals that he said his grandmother had taught him. They ate at the small dining table, talking and laughing, and Sarah felt something growing between them that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. This was not just gratitude or convenience. This was connection, real and deep. The kind she had thought she found with Tom, but now realized she had never experienced before. One evening, about 4 weeks after that first rainy night, Marco arrived looking tense and troubled. His usual calm exterior was cracked, showing the man beneath who carried impossible burdens. Sarah poured him a glass of wine and sat beside him on the couch, waiting patiently until he was ready to talk. "I had to make a decision today," he said finally, his voice rough, "about a man who betrayed my family, who stole from us and put lives at risk. The council wanted him dead, wanted to make an example. It is what my father would have done, what everyone expected me to do." Sarah took his hand, feeling the tension thrumming through him. "What did you do?" "I exiled him instead," Marco said, looking at their joined hands. "Took everything he had and sent him away with nothing but his life. It was mercy in my world, but it was also weakness. The council thinks I am going soft, that I am losing my edge." He looked up at her, his dark eyes searching. "Maybe they are right. Maybe I am changing. Is that such a bad thing?" Sarah asked gently. "In my world, change means vulnerability. Vulnerability means death." Marco's jaw clenched. "But I could not do it, Sarah. I could not order his death when I have you here, reminding me every day that life is precious, that there are alternatives to violence and destruction." "You are making me soft." Sarah shifted closer to him, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward but determined. "You are not soft, Marco. You are evolving. You are choosing to be more than what you were raised to be. That takes more strength than following the path everyone expects." He looked at her with such intensity that Sarah felt her breath catch. "You make me want to be better," he said quietly. "You and that baby. You make me remember why I used to dream of a different life. You make me think that maybe, just maybe, I could have something real again instead of this empty empire." "Marco," Sarah whispered, her heart pounding. She did not know what she wanted to say, what she dared to say. The feelings growing inside her were complicated and confusing, layered with gratitude and genuine affection and something deeper that she was afraid to name. He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "I know this is complicated. I know I am the last person you should have feelings for. I am dangerous and damaged, and my hands are stained with things you should never have to think about. But Sarah, you have become so important to me. This house, it does not feel like a tomb anymore. It feels like a home again because you are in it." Sarah felt tears welling in her eyes. "I care about you too," she admitted, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. "More than I should, more than makes sense. You saved me when I had nothing, but it is more than that now. I see who you are beneath the power and the danger, and I think I am falling for that man." Marco's hand cupped her face fully now, his thumb brushing away the tear that spilled down her cheek. "You deserve better than what I can offer. You deserve someone safe and stable, someone whose past will not put you in danger." "Maybe," Sarah said, leaning into his touch. "But I do not want safe if it means not being with you. I want real. I want someone who sees me and fights for me and makes me feel like I matter." The distance between them closed slowly, giving both of them time to pull away, to think better of this. But neither did. When Marco's lips met hers, it was gentle and careful, nothing like the desperate passion Sarah had experienced with Tom. This was different, weighted with meaning and emotion, the kiss of two people who had found each other in the darkness and chosen to hold on. When they finally pulled apart, Marco rested his forehead against hers, his breathing unsteady. "This changes everything," he said softly. "I know," Sarah replied. "Are you sorry?" "No," he said immediately, pulling back to look into her eyes. "I could never be sorry for this. But Sarah, you need to understand what being with me means. There are people who would hurt you to get to me. There are dangers in my world that you cannot imagine. I can protect you, but I cannot eliminate all risk." Sarah placed his hand on her belly where the baby was kicking actively. "I understand. But running from you now would not make me safe. Your enemies already know I am here if they are watching. And more importantly, I do not want to run. I want to see where this goes, whatever the risks. Marco's hand spread wide across her stomach, his expression softening as he felt the baby's movements. I will protect both of you with my life, he said, the promise absolute. No one will touch you. I swear it on everything I am. The next morning, Sarah woke to find Marco still there, sitting in the chair by her bedroom window, watching the sunrise with a cup of coffee in his hands. He had not left, had stayed through the night in the chair rather than leave her alone. When he noticed she was awake, he smiled at her with a tenderness that made her heart skip. Good morning, he said, coming to sit on the edge of the bed. How are you feeling? Happy, Sarah said simply, reaching for his hand. Scared, but happy. Good, Marco said, leaning down to kiss her forehead. Because I need to ask you something important and I want you to think carefully before answering. Sarah sat up, suddenly nervous. What is it? Marco took a deep breath, and for the first time since she had known him, he looked uncertain, almost vulnerable. Move in with me. Not here in this townhouse, but in my real home. I want you close. I want to wake up every morning knowing you are safe. I want to be there when the baby comes to help you through it. I know this is fast and unconventional, but nothing about us has been conventional from the start. Sarah's mind raced. This was a huge step, one that would fundamentally change her life and tie her to Marco in ways that would be difficult to undo. But as she looked at him, at this powerful, complicated man who had shown her nothing but kindness and care, who had saved her when she was at her lowest, she realized the decision was already made. Yes, she said, squeezing his hand. Yes, I will move in with you. Marco's face broke into a genuine smile, the first truly unguarded expression of joy she had seen from him. He pulled her into his arms carefully, mindful of her pregnant belly, and held her like she was something precious. You will not regret this, he promised against her hair. Marco's home was a revelation. Sarah had expected something cold and imposing, a fortress that reflected the dangerous man who ruled a criminal empire. Instead, she found a sprawling estate that was both magnificent and surprisingly warm. The house sat on 5 acres outside the city, surrounded by gardens that Elena had apparently designed before her death. Inside, the rooms were spacious but comfortable, filled with family photographs and personal touches that spoke of a life lived, not just displayed. The staff consisted of people who had worked for Marco's family for decades. They welcomed Sarah with warmth and curiosity, clearly surprised but pleased that their boss had finally brought someone into his private sanctuary. Maria, the housekeeper who had been with the family since Marco was a boy, took Sarah under her wing immediately, fussing over her pregnancy and insisting on preparing special meals to keep both mother and baby healthy. Marco's bedroom was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens and a fireplace that he lit on cool evenings. He insisted Sarah take the bed while he initially planned to sleep in one of the guest rooms, but Sarah refused. They were doing this, whatever this was, and pretending otherwise seemed foolish. That first night, Marco held her carefully in the enormous bed, his hand resting protectively on her belly, and Sarah felt a peace she had never known. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Sarah's life, despite the underlying current of danger that came with being the woman of a man like Marco Valentino. He tried to shield her from the darker aspects of his business, conducting his more violent affairs away from the estate. But Sarah was not naive. She saw the armed security patrolling the grounds, noticed the respectful fear in the eyes of the men who came to meet with Marco, heard the occasional phone call that ended with terse commands that promised consequences for failure. But she also saw the man behind the power. Marco was attentive and protective, anticipating her needs before she voiced them. He attended every doctor's appointment, asked Dr. Chen endless questions about the pregnancy, and read parenting books late at night when he thought Sarah was asleep. He talked to her belly, telling the baby stories in Italian and English, his voice soft with a tenderness he showed to no one else. Sarah's due date approached rapidly, and with it came a mix of excitement and anxiety. Marco had transformed a room near their bedroom into a nursery that looked like something from a luxury magazine. Every possible item a baby could need was there in abundance, from clothes to toys to a high-tech monitoring system that Marco insisted was necessary for his peace of mind. He was terrified something would go wrong, that history would repeat. itself, and Sarah often woke to find him watching her sleep, his hand on her belly, silently counting kicks. One evening, about a week before her due date, Sarah found Marco in the nursery sitting in the rocking chair with a photograph in his hands. It showed Elena, heavily pregnant, glowing with happiness in this very room. Sarah's heart ached for him, for the loss he had endured. She would have been 3 now, Marco said quietly, not looking up. My daughter. I had picked out a name, Isabella Rose. Elena wanted to call her Bella for short. His voice cracked slightly. I never even got to hold her. Sarah moved to him, as quickly as her ungainly body allowed, and knelt beside the chair, taking his free hand. Tell me about that day, she said gently. You have never talked about it, and maybe you need to. Marco was quiet for so long that Sarah thought he would refuse. Then the words began to pour out, raw and painful. There was a hit on one of my warehouses. A rival family trying to make a move, to show they could strike at the Valentinos. Elena wanted to come with me, to handle some charity event planning in my office there. I said no. It was too dangerous with her pregnancy. We fought about it. He paused, his jaw clenching. She went anyway, drove herself there because she was stubborn and independent and would not be told what to do. The attack happened while she was there. They did not know she was in the building. When the explosion started, she tried to run, but he stopped, taking a shuddering breath. A beam fell. She was trapped. By the time we got her out, by the time we got her to the hospital, it was too late. The trauma had caused placental abruption. They tried to save the baby with an emergency surgery, but Isabella was gone. And Elena, she hemorrhaged. She died holding my hand, apologizing for not listening to me. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she clutched his hand tighter. Marco, I am so sorry. That is unbearable. I killed the men responsible, Marco said, his voice empty of emotion now. Every single one who was involved in that attack. I hunted them down and made them pay, but it did not bring them back. It did not fix anything. I just became more of a monster, and they were still gone. He finally looked at Sarah, his eyes red and devastated. I am terrified that I will lose you too, that loving me is a curse that destroys everything good. Sarah pulled herself up with effort and climbed into his lap carefully, wrapping her arms around him. You are not cursed, Marco. What happened to Elena was not your fault. You did not know she would go there. You tried to protect her. And she died anyway, Marco said bitterly. Yes, Sarah said firmly. She died. And that is a tragedy that will hurt for the rest of your life. But Marco, you cannot let that fear stop you from living, from loving again. I am here because you saved me. This baby, she took his hand and pressed it to where their daughter was kicking. This baby is going to be born healthy and safe because you have given us everything we need. You are not a curse. You are our blessing. Marco's control finally broke. He buried his face against her shoulder and sobbed, great wrenching sounds that spoke of 3 years of grief finally finding release. Sarah held him through it, stroking his hair and murmuring comfort, letting him purge the pain he had been carrying alone. When he finally quieted, exhausted, and wrung out, he looked at her with wonder. How did you become so strong? He asked, touching her face gently. I learned from you, Sarah said simply. You showed me that survival is not just about getting through each day. It is about choosing to hope, to fight for something better. You did that for me. Now let me do it for you. Marco kissed her then, deep and meaningful, and Sarah felt the shift between them. They were not just 2 broken people finding comfort anymore. They were partners, building something real from shared pain and unexpected love. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Labor started 3 days later in the middle of the night. Sarah woke to a sharp pain across her belly and a wetness that told her this was real. Marco was awake instantly, moving into action with military precision. He called Dr. Chen, alerted the security team, and had Sarah in the car and heading to the private hospital within minutes, all while maintaining an outward calm that Sarah knew was costing him dearly. She could see the terror in his eyes, the memories of another rushed hospital trip that had ended in devastation. "This is different," Sarah told him firmly during a contraction, gripping his hand hard enough to hurt. "I am fine. The baby is fine. We are not Elena and Isabella. This is our story, and it is going to have a happy ending." Marco nodded, clearly not trusting himself to speak, but his hand never left hers. The labor was long and difficult. Sarah pushed through waves of pain that felt endless, Marco beside her the entire time, wiping her face with cool claws and telling her she was strong. She was doing amazing. He was so proud of her. Dr. Chen remained calm and encouraging, monitoring both Sarah and the baby carefully. Hours blended together in a haze of pain and exhaustion, until finally, Dr. Chen said those magical words. "One more push, Sarah. Your daughter is almost here." Sarah gathered every ounce of strength she had left and pushed with everything in her. The room filled with the sound of a baby crying, angry and loud and absolutely perfect. Dr. Chen lifted a tiny, squirming bundle and placed her on Sarah's chest, and Sarah looked down at her daughter through tears of joy and disbelief. "She is here," Sarah sobbed. "Marco, look at her, she is perfect." Marco stared at the baby with an expression of awe and terror and overwhelming love. His hand shook as he reached out to touch the tiny head covered in dark hair. "She is beautiful," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Just like her mother." After the nurses cleaned and checked the baby, declaring her healthy and strong at 7 pounds and 2 ounces, they placed her in Marco's arms. He held her with a tenderness that made Sarah's heart overflow. This powerful, dangerous man who commanded an empire through fear and respect was completely undone by 8 pounds of infant, tears streaming down his face as he gazed at the tiny life in his arms. "Hello, little one," he murmured in Italian, then English. "I'm going to protect you with my life. You will never know fear or want. You will be loved more than you can imagine." Sarah watched them together and felt something slot into place in her heart. This was her family. Not the conventional kind she had imagined in her youth, but something real and hard-won and precious. A Mafia don who had lost everything and found the courage to try again. A baby girl born into unusual circumstances but surrounded by fierce love and protection. "What should we name her?" Marco asked, looking up at Sarah with vulnerable hope. Sarah had been thinking about this for weeks. She knew what Elena had planned to name her daughter, Nay. That ghost still haunted Marco. "What about Isabella Sophia?" she suggested gently. "Isabella for the daughter you lost, Sophia for hope in a new beginning." Marco's eyes widened, tears spilling over again. "You would do that? You would honor her?" "She was going to be your daughter," Sarah said softly. "She deserves to be remembered, and maybe it will help both of you heal if her name lives on." Marco came to the bed carefully, still holding the baby, and kissed Sarah with a depth of emotion that needed no words. "I love you," he said against her lips, the first time he had spoken those words. "I love you so much, Sarah. You have given me Eve. The first 3 months with Isabella were a blur of sleepless nights and tender moments that Sarah would treasure forever." Marco transformed into a devoted father in ways that surprised even him. He changed diapers at 3 in the morning without complaint, walked the floors with a crying baby singing Italian lullabies his mother had taught him, and stared at Isabella with wonder every single day as if he could not quite believe she was real and his. The estate became a fortress of protection around their little family. Marco's security was already formidable, but after Isabella's birth it became nearly impenetrable. Guards patrolled around the clock, the gates were upgraded with military-grade technology, and Marco personally vetted anyone who came near his daughter. Sarah understood his paranoia, even if it sometimes felt excessive. He had lost one family to violence. He would not lose another. But the danger Marco feared came from an unexpected direction. It started with small things that Sarah initially dismissed: a car that seemed to follow her when she took Isabella for walks around the estate grounds, mail delivered to the house that had been opened and resealed, anonymous phone calls that disconnected when answered. Marco noticed her unease and pressed for details, his expression growing progressively darker as she described each incident. "How long has this been happening?" he demanded, his voice tight with controlled fury. "Maybe 2 weeks?" Sarah said uncertainly, bouncing Isabella, who was fussing in her arms. I did not want to worry you. It could be nothing. In my world there is no such thing as nothing, Marco said grimly. He immediately called his security chief, barking orders in Italian too rapid for Sarah to follow. Within an hour the estate was on lockdown and Marco sat Sarah down to explain what he suspected. There are rules in my world, he said, his hands clenched on his knees. Families do not target women and children. It is a line we do not cross, an honor code that keeps some semblance of civilization in our violence. But the Castellano family has been pushing boundaries lately, testing limits. Their Don, Victor Castellano, he has no honor. If he has learned about you and Isabella, if he sees you as leverage against me. Sarah felt ice flood her veins. What are you saying? I am saying that I need to handle this before it becomes a crisis, Marco said, his eyes hard. I need to make it clear that touching my family means war. Total and complete. But Sarah, this also means I need to ask you something important. He pulled a small box from his pocket and Sarah's breath caught. Marco opened it to reveal a stunning diamond ring, simple but elegant. Marry me, he said, and it was not quite a question. Not because of the danger, though that is part of it. Married to me, you and Isabella have legal protections, inheritance rights, the full backing of the Valentino name. But more than that, I want it. I want you to be my wife, to build this life with me officially. I want Isabella to grow up knowing her parents chose each other. Chose this family. Sarah looked at the ring, then at Marco, then down at Isabella sleeping peacefully in her arms, completely unaware of the dangerous world she had been born into. Yes, she said without hesitation. Yes, I will marry you. Not because I am scared, though I am, but because I love you and this is what I want too. Marco slipped the ring on her finger, then pulled both her and Isabella into his arms, holding them like they were his entire world. Because they were. Everything he had built, everything he had become, it all funneled down to this moment. These two people who had given him a reason to be more than just a man of violence and power. The wedding happened quickly, a small ceremony at the estate with only Marco's closest family and trusted associates present. His sister flew in from Boston with her husband and children, embracing Sarah with genuine warmth and whispering that she had never seen her brother so happy. The ceremony was simple but beautiful, with Isabella held by Maria during the vows, wearing a tiny white dress and sleeping through the whole thing. When Marco kissed Sarah as his wife, sealing their unconventional union, she felt the weight of the decision and the rightness of it in equal measure. This was her life now, for better or worse. She was Sarah Valentino, wife of a Mafia Don, mother to his daughter, living in a world where love and danger walked hand in hand. The situation with the Castellano family came to a head 2 weeks after the wedding. Marco had been working tirelessly to identify who had been surveilling Sarah, using every resource at his command. When he finally got the confirmation he needed, his response was swift and brutal. He did not tell Sarah the details, but she woke one morning to find the surveillance had stopped. The threatening calls had ended, and Marco looked both exhausted and grimly satisfied. It is handled, was all he would say. The Castellano family understands that you and Isabella are untouchable. Victor Castellano himself called to apologize and assure me that the subordinate who acted without authorization has been dealt with. We have an understanding now. Sarah did not ask what that understanding entailed or what had happened to the subordinate. There were parts of Marco's world she had accepted she would never fully understand or participate in. She could live with that as long as her family was safe. Life settled into a new normal over the following months. Sarah returned to painting, setting up a studio in one of the estate's many rooms. Marco connected her with gallery owners and collectors, and to Sarah's amazement, her work began to sell. She had her first show when Isabella was 6 months old, and it was a genuine success based on talent, not just Marco's influence. Standing in that gallery, watching people admire her paintings while Marco held Isabella and beamed with pride, Sarah felt like she had finally found herself. Marco continued to run his empire, but Sarah noticed changes in how he conducted business. He was less quick to resort to violence, more interested in negotiation and strategic thinking. His counsel grumbled but could not argue with results. Under Marco's evolving leadership, the Valentino family actually grew stronger, commanding respect through calculated power rather than just fear. Isabella grew into a happy, healthy baby with her father's dark eyes and her mother's bright smile, She was spoiled shamelessly by Marco, who could deny her nothing but also deeply loved. Marco read to her every night without fail, teaching her Italian alongside English, building a bond that was beautiful to witness. He was healing, Sarah realized. Every smile from Isabella, every milestone, every ordinary moment of fatherhood was stitching closed the wounds left by Elena and the daughter he had lost. One evening, when Isabella was nearly a year old, Sarah found Marco in the nursery again, but this time he was smiling at the sleeping baby, not lost in grief. He looked up when Sarah entered, reaching out to pull her close. "I was just thinking," he said quietly, "about that night I met you. If it had not been raining, if I had not gone to that bench on the anniversary of Elena's death, if you had caught that bus, our lives could have gone completely differently." Sarah leaned into him, watching their daughter sleep. "Do you believe in fate?" "I did not used to," Marco admitted. "In my world, you make your own destiny through power and will. But now, I think maybe some things are meant to be. Maybe I was supposed to lose Elena to become the man you needed. Maybe you were supposed to struggle to find your way to that bench. Maybe all of it, the pain and the loss and the fear. Maybe it was all leading us to this moment." "That is a comforting thought," Sarah said. "That our suffering had purpose." "Not just purpose," Marco corrected, pressing a kiss to her temple, "but meaning. We found meaning in each other, built something beautiful from our broken pieces. That is not fate. That is choice. We chose each other, chose to take a risk on something impossible." Sarah turned in his arms to face him fully. "Are you happy, Marco, truly?" He looked at her with such intensity that it took her breath away. "I'm happier than I ever thought I could be," writhing. "I love you too," Sarah replied, meaning it with her entire being. "You saved me, Marco. You gave me a life when I had nothing. You gave me love when I was alone." As they sat together, Marco beside Sarah on the hospital bed with baby Isabella cradled between them, Sarah reflected on the impossible journey that had brought her here. 6 months ago, she had been homeless and hopeless, sitting alone on a bench in the rain. Now she was in a private hospital room, holding her healthy daughter, loved by a man who would move heaven and earth to keep them safe. Life was strange and unexpected. It threw you curveballs and challenges that seemed insurmountable, but sometimes, if you were very lucky, it also threw you lifelines in the form of dangerous men with red roses and grief-stricken hearts. Sometimes the most unlikely people became your salvation. Sometimes love found you in the rain and changed everything.